Without any further ado, I'm going to try and shut up because I found a guy that can talk even more than me. Former congressman, former 10-year CIA veteran, former officer of the United States Army who did, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. A man who took really the Connecticut Convention by storm and has his hat in the ring for the United States Senate. Rob Simmons has joined us right here on the set, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marty. It's a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure. And based on what I just observed for the past few minutes, I'm noticing this seat is very hot. Maybe I can switch and sit where you're sitting.
Our viewing audience are very busy. They can't keep track of all this stuff. I'm trying to break it down. There's so many primaries going on.
Of course.
There's so much going on. The people don't really, aren't really there. They're out. They're picking up their kids from karate. They're going to Little League games. They're trying to get out of the heat. And so we're trying to break it down for him. But you are running for the United States Senate.
Yes.
You had your hat in the ring.
Yes.
You're in a pitched battle, at least you were, with Linda McMahon,
yes,
who spent, by some calculations, $14 million.
20 in the kitty.
20 in the kitty.
That's right.
She's ready to go. I mean, I think she has some good things to say, but my gosh, how do you compete with that? You have your lovely wife here who's driven you here. Where's the entourage? There she is.
Hey,
all you do is you come with your record,
yeah,
and what you've done for the state of Connecticut, and this concept that, hey, your Senate seat cannot be bought.
Well, and that's really what it's all about. It's a treat to be here, and I've been here before, as you know, and we've had some very good conversations, very insightful conversations. I began the race for the U.S. Senate back in January, February, March of last year, and at the time, nobody said that there would be any opportunity for success. Senator Chris Dodd had been in office for 5 terms. I think he was the longest-serving senator in Connecticut history. He's the son of a senator, served also as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. But I felt that he had strayed from the state and from the principles that we think are important, that he had run off to Iowa and done a variety of other things, which are history now, and that he was vulnerable. And I felt that sooner or later the bloom was going to be off the rose for the Obama administration, and that, of course, has happened as well. And so other people have come into the race. We've had as many as 6 people in the race. Because of my background and experience working as a Republican, being elected as a Republican, I probably bet the farm on the convention. I lost the convention by a few percentage points, and that was very.
That was intense.
That was very disappointing.
I was there. The arms that were twisted.
Oh well, there was a lot going on. As you know, there was a lot going on.
I voted for you for whatever it's worth.
I appreciate that.
I don't agree with all your positions. This whole abortion thing, we need to talk. But let's move ahead.
There's a lot to discuss.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, after the convention, I consulted with my family. I said, maybe the best thing to do is just curtail the campaign. We've been at it for over a year. If my party wants somebody else, a new face, if you will, well, then let's give that person the opportunity. So we curtailed the campaign. We scaled back. We let our staff go work on some other campaigns, and I began working for other candidates, traveling around the state, working for other candidates. And but I said I was going to keep my name on the ballot. And as you can see, my name is on the ballot. And I said I'd keep it on the ballot. Never said I'd take it off the ballot. Right. So it's on the ballot. So what's happened? Well, in recent weeks, hundreds of people, as I travel the state, they say, Rob, you're traveling around, you're helping us. What about you? What are you going to do? Are you going to get more active? And I would tell them, I'm on the ballot. And they say, well, we didn't know that. So what I've decided to do is put out a little simple ad that simply says, this primary is important. It's in August when everybody goes on vacation.
Right, August 10th.
All the kids,
get an
my wife's a school teacher. All the kids are out of school.
Yeah.
And it's hot, and nobody's focusing. But look at this: the Republican Party alone has 5 primary primary candidates.
Right.
So it's important.
Right.
And my point is to say these choices are important. because the choices that you're making are going to determine who's representing you in Washington, D.C. next year.
Right.
So look at the candidates, and then also look at who's going to be competitive in the Senate race against Richard Blumenthal, because that's the final contest.
Well, let me just throw something in here real quick. I got two polls right here, one from Quinnipiac, the other one from Rasmussen.
Yes.
I think this had a little bit to do with your somewhat getting back in this campaign also. The latest,
Yes.
I'm looking at the trend lines, okay, from
Yes.
Quinnipiac, and it shows that, you know, you against Mr. Blumenthal is running right now 55 to 35.
Yes.
While Lyndon McMahon, who spent, like you said, $20 million into this campaign, is running 54 to 37. Relatively, with the margin of error, is completely equal. And that's basically been the trend since at least May.
Yes.
When you decided to curtail your campaign.
Yes.
Now, Rasmussen, I'm sorry, let me continue on this. 38% of the public feel favorably that Ms. McMahon has the right experience to be U.S. Senator, while 49% disagree and do not feel that she has what it takes to become U.S. Senator. Rasmussen basically is mirroring the same thing as well, showing that Lyndon McMahon against Blumenthal has 53, Lyndon has 40. You against Blumenthal 56-33.
Right.
With the margin of error, that isn't that far off. Again, considering that she spent $20 million in this campaign, you had the Vietnam flap that came out, and you have not basically spent no money whatsoever. You're relatively running the same.
That's right.
How much of that how much was a factor in you being more vocal and coming out with this TV ad right now?
That is somewhat of a factor with me, but I can assure you that's a factor with people that were calling me. And I find myself in a very unusual situation. Have you ever heard of Governor Lowell Weicker? Senator Lowell Weicker, the last Republican senator we had. Well, he and I have had our differences over the years. In fact, I voted against his income tax, and he didn't appreciate it. And yet he is publicly calling me to get more active in the race. Have you ever heard of Ann Coulter, the syndicated columnist who actually grew up in New Haven, Connecticut? She's calling for me to get back in the race. Now, she's somewhat on the right of the spectrum, and Governor Weicker is somewhat on the left. So if people, prominent people, all across the political spectrum are saying, get more involved, you know, that's a significant issue. And I think they're responding to some of the polling data that you've mentioned. But to me, it's more important than that. It's not just these well-known folks. It's the people that I see in the post office. It's the veterans that I see at veterans events or down at the VFW or the Legion Hall. It's the people who call me, who remind me that I helped them when I was a member of Congress. And, you know, we helped a lot of people. I can't remember everybody. And say, look, you helped me. We want you to run. We know that you'll be a good senator, that you'll live with us, you'll listen to us, as you did as a member of Congress and a state representative. So I think about that, and I also think about the fact that of all of the Republican candidates for all of these big offices, I have the highest percentage of individual donors, 92%. 92%. Now, I raised $3 million over the last year and a half, and that's a significant amount if we didn't have some of these really wealthy people in the race.
Right.
But the number that really sticks in my heart is 92% individual donors. Some of these folks on Social Security, $10, $15, $20, $30. And I've had people call me and say, I don't want my money back. I want you to use it to run. And that hits you in the heart.
Well, do you regret, in retrospect, curtailing your campaign back during May?
No, I don't. I think it was the right thing to do at the time. And I felt it was right to give the other two candidates, who were fresh new faces, maximum opportunity to get out there and strut their stuff. But as you have correctly pointed out from the polls, those numbers aren't moving.
And again, this is what I quoted was just trend lines, which is much different than the snapshot it shows from May up to now.
Those numbers aren't moving.
By the way, if you want to ask Rob Simmons any questions, what his stance are on various issues, why he's getting back in the race, or he never really left the race, our number here is 792-4101, 792-4101, and he'll take any questions you have, so don't hesitate to call in.
Now, another thing that I've talked about a lot, I'm sure Marty knows I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people are talking about a lot, is Miss McMahon's experience with World Wrestling Entertainment, wrestling, professional wrestling, and the controversy that surrounds that. How much of that do you think is a factor in her numbers not really moving that much, or relatively, or her negative numbers are being bad? The history with wrestling, I don't think I really need to go into it in graphic detail here, but how much do you think that is a factor in her numbers not really moving as well as she should be moving, considering that she spent $20 million so far in this race?
Yeah, I haven't done any polling on that subject, so it's hard for me to answer with any real sense of preciseness. But let's put it this way. When I was a kid growing up in Connecticut, I had a chance to go over to New London and see Haystack Calhoun and shake his hand. And let me tell you, Haystack Calhoun, he was one big guy.
Big guy, yeah.
And he had a chain around his neck, and he had a horseshoe. It looked like a little piece of jewelry because he was so big. And his wrestling move, it would reach around and grab somebody, and then he'd fall forward on him. Bam, it was over. That's the way I kind of remembered wrestling. But, you know, there's a whole new standard that's been out there that's quite different, that some people, take exception to. Let's put it that way. There's a group of women, I understand, that have organized a group called Mothers Opposing McMahon. Now, I don't know who they are. They don't have anything to do with me, but they obviously have some concern about the product and the fact that the product is marketed to children, and what impact might that have. So I think that's a question she's going to have to answer. My understanding is she's coming up with an ad this week or next week which addresses that issue, but it's a question she has to answer. I've had to answer questions about my Vietnam service. So, this is all part of the process. When I first ran for Congress, I was accused of doing some terrible things in Vietnam that were totally false, but I had to address the issue, and the issue eventually went away because it was not accurate. She's going to have to address this issue, and the thing that surprises me is that she didn't address it right up front when she started running last year. It has kind of come to the forefront as we get closer to this primary. So that's something she's going to have to deal with. When you run for public office, you get examined carefully. They go through everything. My taxes, my finances, my wife, my kid, my I don't know, college degree, associations. Yeah. People have no idea what an invasive process it is. And it's interesting to me that some folks who are doing it for the first time, who come in right in the top slots, kind of have a feeling that, well, you buy some ads and you give some speeches, and that's all there is to it. In our country, we examine our candidates carefully. And I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to examine our candidates carefully, to be comfortable with who they are. It's a good idea in public life and for public policy to examine folks carefully. And I recall this week an example of a woman who worked for the Department of Agriculture who gave a speech where a piece of the speech was put on the internet, and she got fired.
Right.
Turns out, if you took a second look, that what she was saying was taken out of context. So you have to take a second look to make sure that you know what you're getting when you cast that vote. And that's why I draw attention to the fact that indeed, although I curtailed my campaign for several months, I am now back pointing out some of the things that you have mentioned here tonight. And that, yes, I am a candidate. I am on the ballot. I've been on the ballot since the primary, and I'm very competitive against Richard Blumenthal. And part of the reason for that may be this. That's a Vietnam campaign ribbon with 4 service stars. That's a Vietnam service ribbon. I did serve in Vietnam. And he didn't, but he said he did. And that raises questions. And that brought him very substantially down in the polls. Now, he's popped back a little bit. But that's an issue where he and I can really differentiate. He says that lawsuits create jobs. Maybe if you're a lawyer. Are you a lawyer?
No.
No. Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm not.
Maybe if you're a lawyer, but I don't think lawsuits create jobs. In fact, I think Governor Relp is going to be having a heck of a time getting the hedge funds to Connecticut, and I'd love to have them here, because we have too many lawsuits, and we have an attorney general who's not friendly for business, and our taxes are too high, and oh yes, people target towns like Greenwich. Yeah. Towns like Greenwich and Stamford and Darien create wealth for the state of Connecticut. They create it. They don't need to be demonized.
I agree.
And let me give you an example. You know about Foxwoods Casino in Mohegan Sun.
I've heard of that. I've seen the billboards.
You've been there. Probably thrown a few coins in the bucket.
Well, it's a blackjack. I stick on 16. That's
you've been there. And everyone talks about the millions of dollars that they bring to the state of Connecticut. Well, it's around 400 million. In a good year, Greenwich brings in 600 million.
Wow.
That one town brings in more revenue to the state in a good year, and we've had some bad years, than Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun combined. That gives you a sense of how they do help the state, and yet they're constantly being picked on, pinged on by other communities.
All right, let me just talk some raw politics here.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. I know this is like, you know, a big love fest here, but let me ask you some questions.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Did you not say that you were going to abide by the convention and that whatever they say you'll do, and that if these other guys won, they were going to have a primary anyways, but you weren't? You were going to abide by that. Did you say that? I'm not asking like I know the answer.
I propose.
Help me with my recollection.
If you go on my webpage, you can read my statement. Okay. And the statement's been posted for 2 months, and nobody has quibbled about the statement that I made until now. And what I said in the statement was that out of respect for essentially what the party leadership did at the convention, I was going to curtail my campaign, okay, and scale back campaign activities. Now, what did that mean? I let my staff go. I stopped fundraising. I stopped issuing press releases. I stopped doing a range of activities because I needed secretarial support and support for doing my filings. I kept a clerk on payroll, but that's not an unusual thing to do. The campaign headquarters actually closed, and she does her work out of her home. I also said that I was going to travel around the state and help Republican candidates. But I also said I'm going to keep my name on the ballot out of respect for the 46% of the delegates who did support me, and out of respect for the 14,000 that had contributed to my campaign and the many others who have supported me over the years. So I did exactly what I said I was going to do.
All right, I'm not.
And I know that there's at least one other campaign out there that is fussing about that. But, you know, they have to understand that primaries are part of the process. If you want to call me a spoiler, and I'm not, what about Peter David Schiff and Doug Dubitsky and Ross Garber and Lisa Wilson Foley and Michael Fideli and Oz Griebel and Janet Peckinpah? None of them won the convention, but they all fairly and legitimately got on the ballot. So this is what the process is all about.
Now, okay, here's kind of a theory, and I guess I'm asking you to. It's cable access. We don't have a really big budget. But basically, I mean, when you look at this economic juggernaut that is Linda McMahon's campaign and the amount of financial firepower that they bring, if you look at post-convention before the primary, let's just say there's 3 months, and you're saying, well, I don't got the firepower to fight for 3 months. But if we really turn the heat up, I can fight for 3 weeks, and we can do something here. Was this like a master plan, or honest to goodness, cross your heart, hope to die? Were you an Eagle Scout?
No.
You just had that Eagle Scout image. I thought maybe you were. But honest to goodness, can you tell us that this was really a legitimate, you know, just going to the different events and people saying, hey, I want you, that now here in the 8th inning, the bottom of the 8th, you're throwing your hat back in the ring, so to speak. Although you'll say it wasn't. Was this a master plan, or did this really just come?
I'd like to think that I'm not smart. I'm not sure that I'm not smart. Different people have alleged different things, but I can tell you that the weekend after the convention, my wife and I sat in the living room of our house with my son and my daughter, and I read to them a statement that I had written. And that statement, essentially, with the exception of a few words, is the statement that I delivered to the media the following Tuesday and posted on my webpage. I am proud to be a Republican. Now, you don't hear that a lot in Connecticut, but I'm proud to be a Republican. And I have worked in the trenches for the Republican Party in this state for many years. I've been a Republican fighting for Republican values when we didn't have a chance. And that's, I believe in the Republican principles of freedom, free enterprise, personal responsibility, conservation of our natural resources, promotion of economic freedom and power through free enterprise. All of these values are my values. But I also felt disappointed that for all of the work that I have done and for the races I've won, I was the only candidate that ever won a race in Connecticut, that my party wanted a fresh face, a new face. Okay, well, I suppose I could go down to the plastic surgeon and have a little work done, but that's not my style. So I accepted that because I heard a lot of people tell me that. She has the money and she's a fresh face. Peter Schiff has money, he's a fresh face. Fine.
This is a year of the outsider.
This is the year of the outsider.
You know, all your experience might be working against you.
So fine.
Throw the bums out.
I will do what I love to do, which is go around and help my fellow Republicans, and I've done it for years. I will let my staff go because there's no point in dragging them through a difficult period of time. You can't, when you don't have the party nomination for the convention, it's harder to raise money. So we'll just curtail and let people go and do our thing and see what happens. Well, what happened? You pointed it out in the polls. Nothing happened. 2 months went by. All we got was some more flyers in the mail. The numbers didn't change. I didn't see any debates. I didn't see the candidates traveling around to the different districts and challenging each other with ideas, even to the point that I called Peter Schiff a few weeks ago and said, "Peter, why aren't you debating?" He said, "Well, Mrs. McMahon doesn't want to debate me." I said, "Well, schedule it anyway and show up and debate an empty chair."
We're going to be here. That's exactly.
He said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me." So then I told him a week ago, I said, "Look, I will show up at any debate that you have. And I'm just going to focus on the issues. And one of the most important issues that I'm going to focus on is who can beat Dick Blumenthal and why. And I think we can beat Dick Blumenthal because I think people are unhappy with the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. Unemployment is up way beyond the 8%. The stimulus packages have not worked at all. The new financial services regulation bill guarantees that we will pay taxes for another bailout for companies too big to fail, and that's a disgrace. Companies too big to fail and small business too small to save. Small business is the backbone of our economy. 70% of all new jobs created by small business, they got zilch under the stimulus package, and now they're confronted with health care costs and new taxes with the expiration of the Bush tax cuts. So what we see is a system that's out of balance and out of kilter. And Republicans like me and others have solutions, and these need to be debated and they need to be discussed because this primary is important. And that's what motivated me to get back.
If you pull this off, would this be the greatest Republican comeback in the history of the Republican Party?
Well, I would argue that any Republican comeback is great.
Especially the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Connecticut.
I mean, here we are. What do we got? Like 20 days till the
20 days. 20 days. But look, there's nothing devious here. It's all, what you see is what you get. And that's usually what you get from me. What you see is what you get. And I like to talk the facts. And the facts are, and my wife is here, and she'll nod and say, that's exactly what happened. But, you know, for a couple of months,
this whole living room with the kids, the letter. Was
I know,
yeah.
I know it sounds corny.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, she's making the violin stroke over there. Yeah.
It sounds
she's
corny.
Heard this all before.
But we do corny. And we do corny, and it all starts and ends in the heart of the candidate and in the family. Because if the heart of the candidate and the family aren't into the race, then it's not going to work.
All right, let me ask you this. August 11th, right? The primary's on the 10th.
10th.
August 11th, if history repeats itself, the sun will rise. And the votes will be counted.
Yes.
And then what happens? What happens if Linda McMahon, that juggernaut, continues? Will you support the candidate at that point?
Absolutely. No, I mean, look, I believe that at this time in our history, we need to offset some of the policies and programs that are coming out of Washington, D.C. with an alternative philosophy. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in freedom. I believe in the entrepreneurial spirit of the American people. But I believe that small enterprise can grow us out of this, But I believe that businessmen and women are cautious. They're concerned. They don't know when the next shoe is going to drop. And that's not a good thing.
Let me just have just one last raw politics. Do you and Peter Schiff split a certain percentage of the vote, or somehow? I mean, how does this all work?
Well,
it seems like McMahon has her block, and
what happens is when you go into the ballot or into the voting booth, and you've got the ballot for the U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party, you've got 3 people,
right?
And you pick one of the 3.
Can I ask you why you're on line C as opposed to line B?
Alphabetical.
Oh, it's alphabetical. That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
See, now in the Army, being a Simmons was always a problem because I was the last one into the chow hall.
Right. Right.
But you know, when it came time to volunteer for KP, and you don't volunteer for KP.
No, I don't think so.
Simmons was the last guy to do KP. So you know, sometimes it works well, and sometimes it works badly.
Well, I think you brought up.
But that's the reason.
I think you brought up something else that I want to touch back on again. We look at all the other. There's a lot of Republican primaries going on, more than I can ever recall in the history of Connecticut here, as long as I've been watching politics.
You're right.
And in the 2nd district, for congressional district, we saw debates happening. In the 4th, we saw debates. In the 5th, we saw debates amongst Republicans. We don't see a Republican debate between the candidates running for U.S. Senate, which is a little bit of a concern to me. Would you entertain, or would you agree to do as many debates as possible with Ms. McMahon and Ms. Schiff? Have you reached out to the McMahon campaign in terms of doing debates and
we
have
have
a response from
Peter Schiff has organized several debates. I've accepted his invitation and said I would be there for those, and I will wait and see what happens. But
when is that debate?
Next Tuesday. Trinity College is a income tax-based debate on Thursday at Asnuntuck Community College over in 2nd Congressional District is a second debate. And in fact, I heard this evening, that on the Sean Hannity show, the radio show this afternoon, Sean Hannity said that he would invite me onto the show, but also wanted Mrs. McMahon to come onto the show. So I'm ready to reinvigorate the process by my participation.
So you're back in this race. You're never going, but you're back in 100%.
I believe that it's a competition of ideas. Money is important, but money's not totally and completely important. If that was the case, we wouldn't have a convention, we wouldn't have a primary, we'd simply have the presentation of somebody's stock portfolio, and whoever had the biggest portfolio, you get the seat. You know, I believe that races are to be won and lost, not bought and sold.
Okay.
My guest this evening has been Rob Simmons, former United States Congressman, former CIA agent. Some have said this is James Bond meets Howdy Doody. Forget the Howdy Doody part, but it's somewhat true. And also an officer in the United States Army and served in Vietnam. He has the ribbons to show for it. He's running for the United States Senate against Linda McMahon and Peter Schiff. This is interesting. Now, if you haven't been focused on all these primaries, now's the time. We're down to the last 20 days. So look at these guys. Go on their website. Go to their information. Look at them and see, because Republicans have an interesting opportunity here. Again, the primary is August 10th. If you're going to be out of town like I will be, get the absentee ballots and make sure that your voice is heard, because this is a unique opportunity where there are going to be some real choices, not just federally, but here in the state of Connecticut, you have an opportunity to have your voice heard. So I want to thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
This is one of the first places you've come and made this announcement.
That's
so
right.
It's a bit of a coup. We really appreciate it. Join us next week when Joe Egan will be on. We have this footage from this ridiculous cliff climbing thing in Switzerland that we might run. And, hey, you look at the footage, see if that's doctored. And then August 5th, right here in this studio, we're going to have the 5th congressional debate between Sam Caligiuri, Justin Bernier, and
Mark
Greenberg. Talk about rich guys running for office. They'll all be here, and they will answer your questions. So join us for that. And again, I want to thank Rob Simmons and his lovely wife for coming out. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
This could
Look
be
forward to it.
interesting.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.